I remember the exact moment everything changed. It wasn't when the money arrived, not when the bank balance shifted, not when anyone else noticed. It was right here, right now, in this quiet decision. Today I stop waiting. Today I stop doubting. Today I step into a version of myself that no longer negotiates with fear or limitation. I'm not becoming a multimillionaire someday. I am one from this moment forward. I think like it, I move like it, I expect like it. Every choice I make carries certainty. Every step I take carries purpose. I no longer shrink my vision to fit my circumstances. I expand my identity to match my destiny. This is the line where my old story ends and my real life begins. From today, I don't chase wealth. I embody it. There's a moment most people miss, not because it's hidden, but because it feels too simple to matter. It's not loud, it doesn't come with applause, and it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It's just a quiet decision, a line drawn in your mind where you say, enough. Enough of waiting, enough of doubting, enough of telling yourself one day. And the truth is, everything you've been chasing doesn't begin when money shows up. It begins in that exact moment when you decide you are no longer the person who lives without it. For a long time, you may have believed that becoming a multimillionaire requires something outside of you, luck, connections, perfect timing, or some secret knowledge that only a few people have. But if you look closely at every powerful transformation, every success story, every breakthrough, they all share one invisible starting point. It's the decision, not a half-hearted wish, not a maybe someday, a firm, grounded, undeniable decision that shifts the way you see yourself. Because the moment that changes everything is not when your circumstances change, it's when your identity does. Think about it. Before anything external can reflect wealth, your internal world has to accept it as normal. If deep down you still see yourself as someone who struggles, someone who hopes, someone who waits, then even if opportunities come, you'll hesitate, you'll question them, you'll shrink away from them. But the second you decide, truly decide, that you are a multimillionaire from today, something subtle yet powerful happens. Your standards rise, your tolerance for excuses drops, your focus sharpens, you begin to move differently, not because someone told you to, but because it feels natural. This decision isn't about pretending or forcing yourself to believe something unrealistic. It's about choosing a new identity and then aligning your thoughts and actions with it. A multimillionaire doesn't wake up wondering if success is possible. They expect it. They don't spend their energy doubting every step. They trust their direction. So when you make this decision, you're not claiming that everything is already visible in your bank account. You're claiming that the version of you who creates that reality is now in charge. And here's where most people get it wrong. They think the decision has to be backed by proof. They wait for confidence, for clarity, for signs that it's working, but the decision comes first. The proof follows. If you only decide after things start working out, then you're not leading your life, you're reacting to it. Real change begins when you choose, without evidence, that you are stepping into a new level, and you commit to it so deeply that going back no longer feels like an option. There will be moments, of course, when your old mindset tries to pull you back. It will whisper doubts, remind you of past failures, and question whether you're being realistic. But this is exactly why the decision matters so much, because it becomes your anchor. It reminds you that you are no longer negotiating with fear. You are no longer asking for permission to grow. You've already decided who you are, and now everything else is simply catching up. When you truly make this decision, you stop looking at your current situation as a limitation. Instead, you see it as a starting point. You begin to ask better questions, take bolder steps, and recognize opportunities you once ignored. Your energy shifts from hesitation to direction. And people can feel that. Opportunities respond to that. Life responds to that. Not because of magic, but because clarity and certainty change the way you show up in every moment. So this is the moment. Not tomorrow, not next year, not when things get better. Right now. You draw the line and decide that you are no longer living as the person you used to be. You don't wait to be chosen, you choose yourself. You don't wait to feel ready, you move with intention anyway. Because the truth is, the decision that changes everything doesn't come with guarantees, it comes with commitment. And once you make it, truly make it, you'll realize something powerful. You were never as far away as you thought. The gap between where you are and where you want to be was never just about money, it was about identity. Close that gap in your mind, and your reality has no choice but to follow. There's a strange gap between wanting wealth and actually becoming wealthy, and it's not about effort, intelligence, or even opportunity. It's about identity. Most people spend their lives trying to change their results without ever changing the way they see themselves. They chase more money, better circumstances, bigger breaks, but deep down, they still carry the same old story. I'm trying to make it. And as long as that story stays, no matter what they achieve, it never feels stable. Because results can come and go, but identity is what holds everything in place. If you really look at it, every action you take is a reflection of who you believe you are. Not who you wish you were, not who you pretend to be in front of others, but who you truly accept yourself to be when no one is watching. That belief shapes your decisions in ways you don't even notice. It determines what you tolerate, what you go after, what you walk away from, and how you respond when things don't go your way. So if you still identify as someone who is trying to get rich, your actions will always carry hesitation. You'll second-guess opportunities, play smaller than you should, and hold back just enough to stay in the familiar. But the moment you shift that identity, everything begins to reorganize itself. Not overnight, not in some dramatic explosion, but in subtle, powerful ways that build momentum over time. When you truly see yourself as a multimillionaire, not in your bank account yet, but in your mind, you stop approaching life from a place of lack. You stop asking, can I afford this risk? And start asking, is this aligned with the future I've already chosen? That one shift changes everything. Because now you're no longer reacting to your current situation, you're acting from your future. This isn't about arrogance or pretending to be something you're not. It's about understanding that your identity is a choice, not a fixed label. You weren't born believing certain limits, you learned them. You absorbed them from your environment, your experiences, and the expectations placed on you. And if those beliefs were learned, they can be unlearned. The identity of someone who struggles, who doubts, who hesitates, that's not permanent. It's just a story that's been repeated long enough to feel real. So what happens when you interrupt that story? When you decide with clarity and conviction that you are no longer that version of yourself? At first, it might feel uncomfortable. Your mind will question it. Your habits might not match it yet. You might catch yourself slipping back into old patterns. But that's part of the shift. Because identity change isn't about flipping a switch, it's about consistency. It's about showing up again and again as the person you've decided to become, even when it feels unfamiliar. Over time, something powerful starts to happen. Your thoughts begin to align with your new identity. You notice yourself thinking differently, more confidently, more strategically, more expansively. Your decisions start to reflect a higher standard. You stop settling for less, stop entertaining distractions that don't serve you, and start focusing on what truly moves you forward. It's not forced. It becomes natural, because when your identity changes, your behavior follows. And here's the part most people underestimate. Your environment starts to respond to this shift. The way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you make decisions, it all sends a signal. People pick up on it. Opportunities align with it. You begin to attract situations that match your new level. Not because of luck, but because you're finally positioned to recognize and act on them. But none of this happens if you stay stuck in the old identity, waiting for external proof before you allow yourself to believe. That's the trap. If you say, I'll see myself as successful once I make the money, you're delaying the very shift that creates the money in the first place. It has to happen in reverse. You decide who you are first. You embody it in your thoughts and actions, and then your reality begins to catch up. So this is the real work, not chasing, not forcing, not constantly searching for the next tactic or shortcut. It's stepping into a new version of yourself and committing to it fully. It's letting go of the identity that kept you small and choosing one that expands you. And once you do that, once you truly shift the way you see yourself, you'll realize that becoming a multimillionaire isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you become in the process. Most people think money is earned through hard work alone. But if that were true, everyone working long hours would be wealthy. The real difference shows up in something far less visible: the way you think. Not just positive thinking or surface level motivation, but the deep, automatic patterns that guide your decisions every single day. Because long before wealth appears in your life, it takes shape in your mindset. And if your thinking doesn't match the level you're aiming for, you'll keep circling the same results no matter how much effort you put in. Think about how a multimillionaire approaches a problem. They don't immediately focus on what could go wrong or why something might fail. Their first instinct is to look for possibilities. They ask, how can this work? Instead of, what if this doesn't? That shift might seem small, but it completely changes the direction of your actions. When your mind is trained to find solutions instead of obstacles, you move faster, take smarter risks, and stay in motion even when things aren't perfect. Now compare that to the average mindset most people operate from. It's cautious, often driven by fear of loss rather than excitement for growth. Decisions are filtered through doubt. Is this safe? What if I mess up? What will people think? And while those thoughts might feel protective, they quietly keep you stuck, because every time you choose safety over growth, you reinforce the idea that you're not ready for more. Over time, that becomes your reality. Thinking like a multimillionaire doesn't mean ignoring risks or pretending everything will work out perfectly. It means evaluating risks differently. Instead of asking, what if I lose? You start asking, what do I gain by trying? And what do I lose by staying the same? That perspective puts things into focus. Staying stuck has a cost too. It's just less obvious because it feels familiar. But growth always requires stepping into the unknown, and those who succeed are the ones who become comfortable making decisions without having every answer up front. Another powerful shift happens in how you view opportunities. When your mindset is limited, you tend to wait for the right opportunity to appear, something clear, safe, and guaranteed. But multimillionaires don't wait for perfect opportunities. They create them, shape them, and sometimes even take something ordinary and turn it into something valuable. They see potential where others see nothing. And that ability doesn't come from luck. It comes from training your mind to think beyond what's immediately visible. You also begin to notice how they handle failure. Most people see failure as a stop sign, something that confirms their doubts and pushes them to retreat. But someone with a wealth-oriented mindset sees it as feedback, not a reflection of their worth, but a piece of information they can use to improve. Instead of saying, I failed, so maybe this isn't for me, they ask, what can I learn from this, and how do I adjust? That difference is what keeps them moving forward, while others give up too soon. And then there's the way they think about time. A limited mindset is often focused on immediate results, quick wins, instant gratification, fast success. But a multimillionaire mindset is built on patience and long-term vision. They understand that real wealth is created over time through consistent decisions that compound. So instead of chasing shortcuts, they focus on building something sustainable. They're willing to delay gratification because they trust the process they're in. What's important to understand is that this way of thinking isn't reserved for a select few. It's not something you're born with. It's something you develop, and it starts with awareness. You begin to notice your own patterns. You catch yourself when you default to doubt, when you hesitate out of fear, when you limit your own thinking without realizing it. And in those moments, you choose differently. You replace the old question with a better one. You challenge the assumption that's been holding you back. At first it might feel unnatural. Your mind will try to pull you back into familiar patterns, but the more you practice, the more it becomes second nature. Over time, your thinking starts to shift automatically. You stop seeing barriers as permanent and start seeing them as temporary. You stop waiting for permission and start trusting your own judgment, and that's when things begin to change, not just externally, but in the way you experience every step of the journey. Because in the end, thinking like a multimillionaire isn't about acting rich or chasing status. It's about developing a mindset that consistently moves you forward, no matter the situation. It's about clarity, confidence, and the willingness to grow beyond your current limits. And once your thinking reaches that level, your results can't stay the same for long. There's a quiet voice that has been shaping your life for years, And most of the time, you don't even notice it. It sounds logical, familiar, even protective. It tells you to be careful, to not aim too high, to stay realistic. It reminds you of past mistakes, points out what could go wrong, and keeps you comfortably within the boundaries you've always known. But here's the truth most people avoid facing. That voice, no matter how convincing it sounds, is built on limiting beliefs. And if you don't question it, it will quietly decide how far you're allowed to go. Limiting beliefs don't show up as obvious obstacles. They hide in everyday thoughts. I'm not good with money. People like me don't become wealthy. It's too late for me to start. What if I fail again? These aren't facts, they're interpretations. Stories that were picked up over time, repeated often enough to feel real. Maybe they came from childhood, from people around you, from society, or from your own experiences. But just because something feels true doesn't mean it is. And the moment you begin to see that, you create space for change. The challenge is, these beliefs are comfortable, not because they serve you, but because they're familiar. They give you a sense of certainty, even if that certainty keeps you small. Letting them go can feel unsettling because it forces you into the unknown. It asks you to question everything you've been telling yourself about who you are and what's possible for you. But growth has always required discomfort. You can't carry old limits into a new life and expect things to be different. When you start to release limiting beliefs, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your relationship with yourself. You stop automatically believing every doubt that crosses your mind. You pause, observe, and ask, is this actually true, or is this just something I've accepted without questioning? That one shift is powerful, because once you realize that many of your limits are self-imposed, you begin to see how much more control you have than you thought. This doesn't mean the doubts disappear overnight. They might still show up, especially in moments when you're stepping outside your comfort zone. But the difference now is that you don't let them lead. You recognize them for what they are, old patterns trying to keep you in familiar territory. And instead of obeying them, you choose your direction consciously. You move forward even when the voice says to hold back. You take the step even when it feels uncertain. Another important part of letting go is forgiving your past. Many limiting beliefs are tied to previous experiences, times when things didn't work out, when you failed, when you felt judged or discouraged. Those moments can leave a lasting impression, shaping how you see yourself moving forward. But holding on to them as proof of your limitations only keeps you stuck. What happened before doesn't define what's possible now. It only becomes a limitation if you continue to carry it as one. As you release these beliefs, you begin to notice a shift in how you see opportunities. Things that once felt out of reach start to feel possible. Ideas that you would have dismissed before now seem worth exploring. You become more open, more willing to try, more willing to trust yourself. And that openness is what creates movement, because when you're no longer held back by invisible limits, your actions naturally expand. It's also important to understand that letting go isn't about replacing every negative thought with a positive one. It's not about forcing yourself to believe something that feels fake. It's about creating enough space between you and your thoughts that you're no longer controlled by them. You don't have to believe every doubt, and you don't have to fight it either. You simply recognize it and choose not to let it define your actions. Over time, as you continue to question and release these limiting beliefs, your confidence begins to grow, not from external validation, but from your own experience. You prove to yourself step by step that you are capable of more than you once believed. And that builds a kind of trust that can't be shaken easily. Because now your belief in yourself isn't based on assumptions, it's based on action. This is where real transformation begins, not in dramatic moments, but in the quiet, consistent choice to let go of what no longer serves you, to stop repeating the same old stories, to stop defining yourself by past limitations, and to start seeing yourself as someone who is not bound by those beliefs anymore. Because the truth is, the only thing that has ever limited your potential is what you believed about it. And the moment you begin to let those beliefs go, you don't just create space for new possibilities, you step into them. There's a difference between wishing for a better life and moving like it's already on its way, and that difference shows up in your actions. Not the big dramatic ones that everyone notices, but the small, consistent choices you make when no one is watching. Because at the end of the day, it's not what you say you want that shapes your future, it's what you repeatedly do. And if your actions are still guided by hesitation, doubt, or inconsistency, then no matter how strong your intentions are, they won't carry you very far. Most people wait to feel certain before they act. They tell themselves, once I'm confident enough, once I'm fully ready, then I'll go all in. But that moment rarely comes, because certainty isn't something you find first. It's something you build through action. Every time you take a step forward despite not having all the answers, you strengthen that sense of trust within yourself. You prove that you can handle uncertainty, that you can figure things out along the way. And slowly that builds a kind of confidence that doesn't depend on perfect conditions. Acting with purpose means you stop drifting through your days on autopilot. You become intentional about where your time, energy, and focus go. Instead of reacting to whatever comes your way, you start making decisions that align with the version of yourself you've chosen to become. You ask yourself, does this move me closer to the life I want, or is it keeping me where I am? And that question alone can change how you approach everything, from the way you work, to the way you spend your time, to the opportunities you choose to pursue. There's also a shift that happens when you begin to act from certainty rather than fear. Fear-based action is cautious, hesitant, always looking for reassurance. It keeps you playing small, sticking to what feels safe, but purpose-driven action is different. It's not reckless, but it's decisive. It comes from a place of clarity, where you trust your direction even if the path isn't fully visible yet. You stop overanalyzing every move and start focusing on progress instead of perfection. One of the biggest obstacles people face is inconsistency. They feel motivated for a few days, take action, and then lose momentum when things don't immediately work out. But success doesn't come from occasional bursts of effort. It comes from showing up consistently, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. That's where real growth happens, because discipline bridges the gap between where you are and where you want to be. When you act with certainty and purpose, you also become more resilient. Setbacks don't stop you the way they used to. Instead of seeing them as failures, you see them as part of the process. You understand that every step, even the ones that don't go as planned, is moving you forward in some way. That perspective keeps you in motion, and staying in motion is what separates those who eventually succeed from those who give up too soon. It's important to remember that purpose doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need to have your entire life figured out to start moving with intention. It can be as simple as committing to one clear direction and taking the next step in that direction, consistently. Over time, those steps add up. They create momentum, and that momentum makes everything feel more achievable. Another powerful shift happens when you stop seeking validation for your actions. When you're clear on your purpose, you don't need constant approval from others to keep going. You trust your own judgment. You make decisions based on what aligns with your vision, not on what others expect or approve of. And that independence is what allows you to move faster and with more confidence. As you continue to act in alignment with your purpose, your identity strengthens. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through, someone who takes action, someone who creates results. And that self-image reinforces your behavior. It becomes a cycle. Your actions shape your identity, and your identity shapes your actions. In the end, acting with certainty and purpose isn't about having everything under control. It's about moving forward despite uncertainty. It's about trusting that each step you take is building something, even if you can't see the full picture yet. And it's about committing to the process day after day, without letting temporary doubts pull you off track. Because the truth is, the life you want isn't created in a single moment. It's built through consistent, purposeful action. And once you align your actions with that level of certainty, you stop waiting for things to change. You become the reason they do.